When the crystals were first discovered, deep within the bowels of the earth, they were thought to be the answer to many of the world's problems. A near infinite source of energy, a warm light for all mankind to share. With this grand pursuit in mind, the US government assigned a brilliant researcher to discover ways that the crystal could be activated and used. It became the pursuit of Dr. Leto Apostolakis to unlock the secrets of what lay beyond the strange stones. Leto's ambition would lead him to do much more than that, and in doing so, bring ruin to the world. Traversing the desolate city is always dangerous. The constant route assault and decrepit structures offer more than their fair share of hazards for even the most experienced scavenger. During one such venture, we find ourselves outside a gray office building. The dilapidated stone and rusted metal hide what was once a rather secure structure. Moving inside, we see that much of the areas have been blocked off by root overgrowth. We find a set of stairs which leads us downward into a familiar looking area. The sense of Ward 13's lower levels wash over us as we enter the facility. This is Research Station Alpha, and here is where Leto's legacy resides. The station itself appears fully abandoned, paper and workstations left in mid-use. There is a very clear root presence inside. New strange forms of root with bodies that split down the center litter much of the open areas. They appear to be in a sleeping state and do not move or attack unless first provoked. This place is completely dark, all the terminals and lights black and lifeless. The only light within is the soft red and pink glow from the root spores along the walls. Here we find a set of double doors and a keycard lock similar to the one within Ward 13. We restore power to the station and dispatch the root within. Exploring further, we find a keycard within Dr. Barbara Klein's office behind some toppled bookshelves. With this, we are able to gain access to the lower levels of the station. Looking over the now live computer terminals in the upper floors, pieces of the puzzle fall into place. Leto was assigned to study and implement a technique that would allow for the activation and use of the red crystals. From a discarded notebook within one of the more overrun rooms, we learn how the first months within the research station went. We see that the crystals were incredibly difficult to excavate and transport. Many casualties and unexplained accidents followed those involved in their discovery and study. There is even mention of a full containment breach with another facility which killed 78 technicians and destroyed the entire complex that housed it, burying the crystal and the victims within. It appears as if Leto developed a slight obsession with the crystals and its inner workings. There is a mention of him working tirelessly for weeks on end during the first months after its arrival at Station Alpha. During this time, Leto also began theorizing another possible use for the stones. We see from the terminal of Dr. Barbara Klein that Leto had started to think of the crystals as possible gateways, doors that could connect to one another and to other worlds. Dr. Klein was Leto's second in command within Station Alpha, and she became closely intertwined with his work. There are multiple mentions of them spending lunches together speaking about Leto's theories on the crystals, and there is even a subtle hint that she may have had more than a professional admiration for the Doctor. Despite his new theory, Leto only made slow progress when it came to bringing the stone to life. He, however, was not deterred. He took a small team to Ward 16 in an attempt to further his research and make some headway. Within the ward, one of the world stones resided dormant. Leto began to test differing harmonic frequencies in order to see if they would yield a reaction when matched to the crystal's innate frequency. This stroke of brilliance brought him great success, and within a few weeks, the stone had been brought to life. Many in the research team were overjoyed with the results, but Leto still had more that he wanted to try. During this time, Dreamers were already being used to connect to Guardians within Ward 16. Leto saw this as a chance to test his wormhole theory. Using the signal noises given off by one of the Dreamers within the ward, he changed the harmonic frequencies used to activate the crystal. With that, his theory was proven as a rip in space-time was formed, the first ever portal to another world. A manned expedition was planned to explore the new world, but that didn't interest the brilliant Doctor. Leto returned to Research Station Alpha and began furthering the data in his theory. It seemed that even with his success, he was still unsatisfied. With this obsession driving him forward, he began to look for a way to replicate the crystal's ability to instantly teleport matter from one point to another in space. Unfortunately, it was during this time that the root touched down on Earth. Many of the other stations were overrun, yet Station Alpha remained operational and under Leto's command. Despite the growing chaos that plagued the outside world, he continued to move forward with his personal research into the wormholes. He went as far as to create a device that would seemingly transport beings from one place to the other, a device that Leto tested numerous times on a captured root subject. With each use of the transporter, the subject was destroyed in one location and reassembled at the desired destination. This effectively killed the root itself and made a new copy of it. This was a fate that it was forced to suffer over and over to the point where the root being took on the characteristics of the replication effect as part of its own body. We find a note within Leto's personal terminal that speaks of just that, his final note on the matter being how terrifying it would be if this empowered root escaped the lab's containment. A foreboding word if there ever was one. Leto's device had one fatal flaw. Even though he could effectively replicate the effects of the transportation, he had no way to control where the final destination would be. He struggled with being able to properly direct the entanglement effect that would allow for him to dictate a set point in space for the traveler to land after use. After months of testing the device, those within the facility were told to evacuate by the government. Orders were passed down that much of the area had become overrun by the attacking root and all personnel was to leave. Leto ignored these orders, trapping himself and his team within the station. He believed that his research would be the key to fighting the root as well as escaping the lab. A month after, brilliance once again struck the obsessed doctor. He learned that the harmonics used to activate the crystal were not simply a switch to turn it on and off. They were in fact the instructions needed in order to properly direct the crystal's connection. His final entry refers to this discovery and how it could be used to form a way for him and his team to escape the lab. We can now safely assume that this new species of root that we find within the station are versions of the original that Leto was experimenting on. Within the lower levels of the station, we find a large metal contraption sitting within a protected room, the single hinged door patiently waiting for its next user. Yet another terminal flickers with life beside it. This is Leto's transporter, ready to be used if we so wish. Activating the terminal gives us the option to either use or deactivate Leto's algorithm. We can guess that this algorithm was what he used to direct the machine and allow for his escape. Using the machine without the algorithm reveals that it would simply send users to random locations within the facility. It seems like Leto was never able to fully harness the power of the crystal, and that this device only worked short distances. We are given some hints as to past failed experiments. An especially gruesome scene outside of the transporter room shows a possible escape attempt that went terribly wrong, the user having been fused with a nearby wall. Clearly the process was not perfect. We are even teleported to a room with a large pile of burnt bodies. After a moment, we see a new one fall from the tube above. Here, the realization strikes us in regard to what Leto was talking about. This is not a transporter but a replicator. The original user was always destroyed and a copy was placed at the desired location. Since we are the only person who has been here for years, we know that these are our bodies. Every time we used the machine, our body was destroyed and a copy was left in its place. We appear to be below the transporter room, which we now know also acts as a crematorium. I suppose that explains the flash of light when we use it. Staring at the large number of bodies in the pile, we can hope that the original team within the facility were able to escape in time. Returning to the replicator, we activate the algorithm which moves us to the outside of the station. Before us stretches a long section of underground that once stood as a subway. Root are plentiful and attack en masse at the first sign of movement. We fight our way past and at the end of the tunnel, we find Leto's final legacy. The root subject he used to test his broken theory, the singular being that he tore apart over and over for the sake of his personal desires. Here, buried deep underground, it sits and waits. The effects of the replicator have visibly ripped its body apart, and it seems to exist in a perpetual state of displacement and agony. As we fight it, it screams in pain as its body rips itself in two and forms endless copies. We manage to bring it down and in doing so, undo some of the mistakes that Leto left behind. Did you know we have social media places where I talk about all sorts of lore things and get to interact with you lovely people? We even have a proper Discord channel to discuss new theories, discoveries, and play together. Links are all in the description. Thank you all once again for the amazing support you have thrown my way.